The world is full of old, strange places. Some are hidden under the ground, some sit out in the open, but no one can fully explain them. For a very long time, people have dug up old stones, old bones, and old buildings that seem to break the rules of what we think we know. How did people so long ago move giant rocks without trucks or machines? What do strange carvings and symbols really mean? Why did whole towns and even a room made of gold just vanish? Today we are going to take a long walk through some of the strangest and most puzzling places on Earth. Some of these mysteries are thousands of years old. Some happened much more recently. But all of them share one thing in common. Even smart scientists who study these places for their whole lives still do not have all the answers. So let's start our journey on a tiny island in France, then travel across the world to Peru, Ireland, Turkey, Malta, Bali, Easter Island, and even into the deep, cold sea near Russia. Get ready, because these stories will make you think, and maybe even make you a little bit spooked. Our first stop is a small, quiet island in the Gulf of Morbihan, off the coast of Brittany in France. The island is called Gavrinis. It is so small that most maps barely show it. But under its rocky surface sits one of the strangest tombs in all of Europe. This tomb was built about 5,500 years ago. That is so long ago that it was built before most of the pyramids in Egypt. The tomb is shaped like a long, narrow hallway made of huge stone slabs. The hallway leads into a small room deep inside the mound. What makes this tomb so special is not just its age or its size, it is the carvings on the stones. Almost every single stone inside is covered in swirling spirals, wavy lines, and strange patterns. These are not simple decorations. They are carved so carefully and so deeply that they must have taken a huge amount of time and skill to make. Nobody today knows for sure what these spirals mean. Some experts think they might show the sun, the moon, or the stars. Others think the swirls might be an old kind of writing, a way to send messages that we have completely forgotten how to read. If that is true, then somewhere on those stones might be actual sentences from people who lived thousands of years before writing was even supposed to exist. Some of the stones used to build the tomb weigh more than 50 tons. That is heavier than several elephants standing together. The people who built Gavrinis had no trucks, no cranes, and not even simple metal tools. Yet they somehow cut these stones, dragged them to the island, and lifted them into place with amazing precision. How did they do it? Nobody knows for certain. Some think they used logs as rollers. Some think they used ropes and dozens or even hundreds of workers pulling together. But even with those ideas, moving stones this heavy without wheels or animals to help is still a giant puzzle. And the biggest question of all remains unanswered. What was Gavrinis really for? Was it only a place to bury the dead, or was it something bigger, a place where ancient people believed they could speak with the sky, the spirits, or something else entirely? The tomb still sits there today, quiet and mysterious, holding on to secrets that may never be fully solved. From France, let's travel across an ocean and up into the mountains of Peru, to a place called Ollantaytambo. This is an old Incan site tucked high in the Andes Mountains, in a valley the Incas called sacred. When you stand in front of the walls here, your jaw might actually drop. The stones used to build these walls are huge, some weighing as much as 50 tons, just like the stones at Gavrinis. But what is truly strange is how perfectly they fit together. There is no glue, no cement, and no mud holding these stones in place. Yet they are cut so precisely that you cannot even slide a piece of paper between them. Each giant stone was shaped to fit perfectly next to its neighbors, almost like puzzle pieces made of solid rock. Scientists believe this site was built around the 1400s, during the rule of a powerful Incan king. Most experts think it was used as a kind of fort, and also as a place for special ceremonies. But that answer does not explain everything. Why would anyone need walls this perfect for a simple fort? Some people wonder if this place had a deeper purpose. There is an idea that some ancient builders tried to build in spots where they believed the earth had special natural energy, almost like invisible rivers of power running through the ground. Whether or not that is true, it is a fun thing to imagine while standing next to walls that seem almost impossible to build. Then there is the mystery of the stones themselves. The rock used at Ollantaytambo came from a quarry far away, high across the valley. To get the stones to the building site, ancient workers had to somehow drag these giant blocks down steep, rocky mountains and then back up the other side. There were no wheels used by the Incas, no horses to pull carts, and no modern machines. Most experts believe they used ramps, ropes, and huge teams of workers to slowly slide and lever the stones into place. It must have taken enormous planning and enormous patience. Some old stories even hint at ideas of using sound or vibration to help move stones, almost like a kind of ancient magic trick, though there is no real proof this happened. Whatever the true answer is, Ollantaytambo stands today as one of the greatest puzzles in South America, a place where stone meets sky, and questions still outnumber answers. Now let's hop across the world again, this time to the green rolling hills of County Meath in Ireland. Here, sitting on top of a hill with a spooky name, Sliabh na Cailí, which means Hill of the Witch, are ancient stone mounds called the Loughcrew Cairns. These cairns were built around 5,000 years ago, which means they are older than the pyramids of Egypt too. Each cairn is a mound of stacked stones with a small chamber hidden inside, used long ago to bury the dead. But just like Gavrinis, the real mystery lies in the carvings scratched into the walls. Spirals, circles, and strange patterns cover many of the stones, and to this day, nobody can say for sure what they meant to the people who carved them. Some scientists have found something amazing, though. On certain days of the year, especially around the spring and fall equinox, the sunlight lines up perfectly with the opening of one of the tombs and shines directly onto the carvings deep inside. This means the ancient builders had to understand exactly where the sun would rise on that one special day, and they built their tomb with incredible precision to catch that light. That is not an accident. That takes real planning, real math, and real watching of the sky over many years. So were these tombs only places to bury people? Or were they also a kind of calendar, built into stone, to help ancient farmers know when to plant their crops or celebrate special days? Maybe both answers are true. What is clear is that the people who built Loughcrew were far smarter and more skilled than many people imagine when they picture ancient humans. They studied the sky, they carved messages we still cannot read, and they built monuments that have lasted 5,000 years, longer than almost anything else made by human hands. Speaking of ancient sunlight tricks, let's stay in Ireland, but travel to another famous site called Newgrange. This giant round mound of grass and stone has stood for over 5,000 years, and it might be one of the most amazing pieces of ancient engineering on the entire planet. The mound is surrounded by 97 large curbstones, and many of them are covered in carved spirals, just like the other Irish sites we already talked about. Inside, a long, narrow passage leads to a small chamber at the very center of the mound. But here is the truly mind-blowing part. Once a year, on the winter solstice, which is the shortest and darkest day of the year, something magical happens. A beam of sunlight sneaks through a small opening above the entrance and travels all the way down the long passage, lighting up the inner chamber for just a few minutes. This happens on only one single day each year, and it happens with incredible accuracy. The builders of Newgrange did not have telescopes, computers, or written calendars. Yet somehow, they figured out exactly where the sun would rise on the darkest day of the year, and built a stone structure that would still capture that light perfectly, even 5,000 years later. That is an amazing feat of ancient science. Most experts believe Newgrange was built as a special place of ceremony, perhaps connected to ideas of death and rebirth, since the return of sunlight after the darkest day might have symbolized new life beginning again. But we still do not know exactly who built it, how they learned so much about the sun's movement without writing things down, or what rituals happened inside that glowing chamber. Newgrange reminds us that ancient people were not simple or unskilled. They were careful scientists, watching the sky for generations, passing down their knowledge person to person, long before anyone invented paper or pens. Now, let's leave Europe behind and sail far out into the Pacific Ocean, to one of the most remote islands on Earth, Easter Island, known to its people as Rapa Nui. Most people know Easter Island because of its giant stone statues called moai, but there is another mystery here that is just as strange. It is a stone platform called Ahu Vinapu. The statues that once stood here have mostly fallen, but the platform itself is incredibly special. The stones used to build it are cut and fitted together so perfectly that, just like in Peru, you cannot slide even a thin blade between them. There is no mortar, no glue, nothing holding these giant blocks together except their own perfect shape. This is strange because most other stone platforms on the island are much rougher and simpler. Why is this one platform built with such incredible precision? And here is where the mystery gets even bigger. This kind of stonework looks almost exactly like the stonework found thousands of miles away in Peru, at places like Ollantaytambo. Easter Island and Peru are separated by a huge stretch of open ocean, and the people of Rapa Nui are not believed to have had any direct contact with the ancient people of South America. So how could their building style look so similar? Some experts think it might just be a coincidence, since cutting stone perfectly might be something different cultures figured out on their own. Other people wonder if ancient sailors somehow crossed the vast Pacific Ocean and shared building secrets between these two very distant lands, a kind of lost network of ancient sailors and builders that history books do not fully explain. We may never know the full truth, but Ahu Vinapu stands today as proof that some ancient stoneworkers on a tiny island in the middle of nowhere mastered a building technique that still amazes engineers today. Let's shift gears now and travel to Turkey, to a spot called Çatalhöyük, one of the oldest cities ever discovered by archaeologists. This city is incredibly old, dating back about 9,500 years. To put that in perspective, that is thousands of years before the first pyramids were built. What makes Çatalhöyük so strange is not a giant stone or a beam of sunlight, but the way the whole city was built. Instead of streets with doors facing outward, the houses here were built so close together that their walls touched. There were no streets at all. Instead, people walked along the flat rooftops and climbed down ladders through holes in the ceiling to get inside their homes. Imagine an entire town where you never walk down a street, but instead walk across the roofs of your neighbors' houses to get anywhere. Inside these homes, families painted colorful walls with pictures of animals and strange symbols. Even stranger, many families buried their dead relatives right underneath the floors of their own homes, sometimes even under the very spot where people slept. This tells us that the people of Çatalhöyük felt very close to their ancestors, almost like the spirits of the dead were still living among them every single day. Scientists have not found any evidence of kings, rulers, or powerful leaders in this ancient city. There were no palaces and no giant temples built above everyone else. This makes some experts think that Çatalhöyük might have been a very fair and equal society, where no one person or family held more power than anyone else. That is a surprising idea for such an old civilization, since we often assume ancient people always had kings and queens ruling over everyone. But if there were no rulers, How did thousands of people living so closely together decide on rules, solve arguments, or organize their daily lives? That mystery remains unsolved, hidden beneath painted walls and floors filled with the bones of ancestors who lived and died so very long ago. Now let's cross an ocean once more and land in the state of Alabama, in the United States, at a place called Moundville. This site sits along the banks of the Black Warrior River and holds more than 20 large mounds made entirely of packed earth, some standing as tall as 30 feet high. These were not built by digging, but by carrying basket after basket of soil, one load at a time, for many, many years, until giant mounds rose from the flat land. Moundville was once a busy, important city for a group of people called the Mississippian culture, who lived across a large part of what is now the southeastern United States, between about 900 and 1600 years ago. At the center of the site sits the largest mound, likely home to a powerful chief or leader, surrounded by smaller mounds that held the graves of other important people. Pottery, tools, shells, and copper objects found here show that Moundville was connected to trade routes stretching far across the land, bringing goods from distant places. But here is the biggest mystery of all. By the time European explorers arrived in this area, Moundville had already been abandoned. The busy, thriving city had gone quiet, its mounds slowly being reclaimed by grass and trees. Nobody knows for certain why such a powerful, organized society disappeared. Some experts think it might have been caused by fighting between different groups, or maybe by long periods of drought that made it hard to grow enough food. Others wonder if disease or environmental changes played a role. What we do know is that the layout of the mounds seems carefully planned, with some mounds lining up with the sunrise on special days of the year, hinting that these people, like so many others in this list, were also careful watchers of the sky. Whatever caused Moundville's people to leave, they left behind silent hills of earth that still whisper questions we may never fully answer. Let's travel now to the sunny island of Malta, sitting in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, to visit the Tarxian temples. These temples were built around 5,000 years ago and are considered some of the oldest freestanding stone structures anywhere on Earth, meaning they may be even older than Stonehenge in England. The complex includes 4 separate temples, each covered in detailed carvings of spirals, animals, and human figures. One of the most famous carvings shows a large figure believed to represent a mother goddess, a symbol of fertility and life. The walls of these temples curve in gentle, rounded shapes, which is unusual compared to the straighter walls found at many other ancient sites. Some experts believe these curved walls were designed on purpose, perhaps to represent the shape of a human body or to create a feeling of comfort and safety for the people who came here to pray or perform rituals. Most historians agree that Tarxian was a place of worship, likely connected to farming and the hope for good harvests, since carvings of bulls, goats, and pigs appear throughout the temple walls. But some researchers think there might be more to the story. They point out that parts of the temple line up with the movement of the sun and stars, just like Newgrange in Ireland and Loughcrew's hilltop tombs. Could the priests of ancient Malta have used this temple as a kind of star-watching tool, tracking the sky the same way people did across Europe, at roughly the same time in history? If true, this raises an exciting question. Were ancient people all across the Mediterranean and Europe somehow sharing ideas about astronomy, passing knowledge from island to island and country to country, long before written history began? Nobody can say for sure, but the curved stone walls of Tarxian continue to hold on to their secrets, carved deep into rock that has survived for 5,000 years. Not far from Malta, across the sea in southern Spain, near a town called Antequera, sits another giant stone monument called the Dolmen of Menga. This massive tomb has stood for over 5,000 years and is one of the largest ancient stone structures in all of Europe. As you walk toward it, the size of the stones is almost hard to believe. Some slabs weigh several tons, and they form a long, narrow passage leading into the heart of the tomb. Resting on top of the upright stones is a giant capstone, a flat piece of rock so heavy, weighing around 180 tons, that it seems impossible anyone could lift it into place without modern machines. Yet somehow, ancient builders using only ropes, wooden logs, and teamwork managed to raise this enormous slab and set it gently on top of the other stones, where it has remained balanced for thousands of years. The tomb is built with 32 giant upright stones forming its walls, and the whole structure is lined up carefully with the sunrise, suggesting once again that these builders paid close attention to the movement of the sun across the sky. Like the other tombs we've explored, Menga is covered with carvings, symbols, and patterns, whose true meaning has been lost over the centuries. Some experts think these carvings might represent an early kind of writing, a way for people to record ideas, stories, or beliefs using pictures instead of letters. If that is true, hidden somewhere in those ancient carvings might be actual messages left behind, waiting patiently for someone clever enough to finally translate them. Until then, the dolmen of Menga stands quietly in the Spanish countryside, another giant stone puzzle from a world we can only partly understand. Let's travel now to the lush green island of Bali, in Indonesia, to visit a peaceful and beautiful site called Gunung Kawi. Tucked into a valley next to a rushing river, this ancient site is made up of 10 shrines carved directly into tall cliffs of solid rock. Each shrine stands about 7 meters tall, which is roughly as tall as a 2-story building, and each one was carved by hand into the stone cliff face using simple tools. These shrines were built around 900 years ago, during a period when the island of Bali was ruled by kings and deeply influenced by both Hindu and Buddhist beliefs. Many historians believe the shrines were built to honor royal ancestors, almost like giant stone memorials carved to remember kings and queens who had passed away. But the mystery here is not just in who they honor, but in how they were made and arranged. The shrines are lined up in a way that seems to follow careful planning, almost as if the builders were thinking about the movement of the sun, the flow of the river, or some deeper connection between nature and spirit. Walking through the site today, visitors often describe a strong feeling of peace and wonder, as though the valley itself was chosen specifically because of some special quality, not just for its beauty, but for something harder to explain. How did the builders manage to carve such detailed, lifelike figures directly into solid cliffs using only basic tools available at the time? And why choose this particular hidden valley, tucked away from the rest of the island, instead of building somewhere more open and easy to reach? Some people wonder if ancient builders across Southeast Asia were part of a larger, connected tradition, sharing ideas about how to build sacred spaces that lined up with the sky and the land. Whatever the full answer may be, Gunung Kawi remains one of Bali's most peaceful and puzzling treasures, carved into rock, but never fully explained by history. Now let's shift away from ancient stone monuments and talk about something a little different, a strange and clever machine pulled from the bottom of the sea near Greece. In the year 1900, divers searching an old shipwreck near the island of Antikythera found a lump of corroded metal covered in gears. At first, nobody understood what they had found, but after many years of careful study, scientists realized this object, now called the Antikythera mechanism, was actually an incredibly complex machine built more than 2,000 years ago. Inside, dozens of tiny bronze gears fit together with such precision that some experts compare it to an ancient computer. When turned by hand, this machine could predict the movement of the sun, the moon, and even eclipses years in advance. This is shocking because nothing else built with this level of complexity has ever been found from that time period, not for over 1,000 years afterward. It is almost as if this machine appeared far too early, showing a level of engineering skill that seems to belong in a much later century. So why did this amazing invention seem to disappear so completely? If ancient Greek engineers really could build something this advanced, why don't we see other similar machines from that time? Some historians think that maybe more devices like this did exist, but they were made of valuable metal and were melted down and reused over the centuries, erasing any evidence they ever existed. Others wonder if this incredible knowledge was known only to a small group of scholars or priests, kept secret and never widely shared, and lost forever once those people died. Whatever the answer, the Antikythera mechanism reminds us that ancient people were sometimes far more advanced than we give them credit for, capable of building machines so precise that modern scientists are still amazed by them, thousands of years later. Let's move now from ancient machines to an ancient treasure that vanished during a much more recent time in history. An incredible room made almost entirely of gold-colored amber, called the Amber Room. This dazzling room was originally built in Prussia, in what is now part of Germany, and later given as a gift to the leader of Russia. The walls were covered in panels made of real amber, a golden fossilized tree resin, decorated with gold leaf and mirrors, and the whole room was said to glow like sunlight whenever candles were lit inside it. People at the time called it one of the most beautiful rooms ever created, sometimes even nicknamed the eighth wonder of the world. But during the chaos of the Second World War, invading soldiers took apart the Amber Room piece by piece and shipped it away to a castle for safekeeping. And then, suddenly, it vanished. Nobody knows for sure what happened next. The official explanation from Soviet leaders after the war was that the room had been destroyed when the city where it was stored was bombed. But many people find that explanation hard to believe. Some think the room might have actually been secretly moved somewhere else entirely, hidden away by soldiers or officials who understood how valuable it truly was. Others believe it might have been destroyed on purpose, not by accident, as a way of erasing a symbol connected to an old, unwanted government. To this day, despite decades of searching, treasure hunters, historians, and even amateur explorers have never found any solid trace of the original Amber Room. In 2003, workers in Russia finished building an incredible copy of the room based on old photographs and drawings, and today people can visit this recreation and get a glimpse of what the original once looked like. But it remains only a copy, a shadow of something truly lost. Did the real Amber Room burn to ashes during the war? Or is it still out there somewhere, hidden in a tunnel, a basement, or a forgotten corner of the world, waiting for someone lucky enough to finally find it? From a missing room, let's turn to a missing group of people in one of the strangest disappearances in modern history, the case of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. The Flannan Isles are a group of small, rocky islands off the coast of Scotland, battered constantly by wind and waves. In the year 1900, 3 men were working there as lighthouse keepers, responsible for keeping the light burning to guide ships safely past the dangerous rocks. But when a supply boat arrived one December day, something was terribly wrong. The lighthouse was completely empty. The 3 men were simply gone, with no bodies ever found, and no clear explanation left behind. Inside the lighthouse, searchers found an eerie scene. A meal sat unfinished on the table. Chair had been knocked over, yet nothing seemed stolen, and there were no signs of a struggle or a fight. Some clues suggested the men might have gone outside during a huge storm to check on equipment near the edge of the cliffs, possibly getting swept away by a massive wave. This explanation makes some sense, since storms in that area can be extremely dangerous. But it does not explain everything. Why would all 3 experienced keepers, trained to be careful during storms, go outside together at the same time, leaving a meal behind unfinished. Some old local stories whisper about ghosts and strange lights seen near the islands, suggesting something supernatural might have frightened the men. There are even wild theories suggesting the men fled on purpose, running from something or someone, though no evidence supports this. Whatever truly happened that day, no bodies, no notes, and no clear answers were ever found. The lighthouse still stands today, a quiet reminder of three men who vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that still puzzles people more than a century later. Sailing back across the ocean to early America, let's visit the story of Fort Caroline, an early French colony built along the coast of what is now Florida in the 1500s. French settlers built this fort hoping to create a new home far from their homeland, but their story ended in tragedy and confusion. Spanish soldiers eventually attacked the fort, and most of the settlers who did not escape were killed. But among the confusion of records from that time, there are strange gaps and unanswered questions about exactly what happened to certain groups of settlers who seem to have vanished from the historical record entirely, with no clear account of their fate. Some historians wonder if certain settlers escaped deep into the surrounding wilderness, perhaps living among nearby Native American tribes, blending into a new life far from written history. Others wonder if they became lost in the thick forests, swamps, and winding rivers of the Florida landscape, never finding their way back to any kind of civilization. There is no solid evidence that anything supernatural occurred, and no proof of some hidden treasure or secret discovery causing settlers to flee in panic, though some old and unproven stories suggest exactly that kind of dramatic tale. What we are left with instead is simply silence, a handful of confusing old documents and overgrown ruins slowly sinking back into the Florida soil. The true fate of these lost colonists remains one of early America's quiet, unresolved mysteries, a reminder that not every question from history gets answered, even hundreds of years later. Finally, let's end our journey with one of the most famous ancient mysteries of all, the story of King Tutankhamun, the young pharaoh of ancient Egypt. When his tomb was finally discovered in the 1920s, after being hidden and sealed for thousands of years, it was one of the most exciting archaeological discoveries in history, filled with gold, jewelry, and treasures fit for a king. But almost immediately, strange rumors began to spread about a curse placed on anyone who dared to disturb the pharaoh's final resting place. Not long after the tomb was opened, the wealthy man who had financed the excavation became sick and passed away suddenly, sparking rumors across newspapers around the world that an ancient curse was punishing those responsible for waking the sleeping king. Was there really a curse hidden inside the tomb, protecting the young pharaoh even in death? Most modern scientists believe there is a much simpler explanation. Ancient tombs, sealed for thousands of years, can sometimes contain dangerous mold, bacteria, or gases that built up inside the sealed chamber over centuries, and breathing this in could genuinely make a person sick without any magic involved at all. Still, the mystery of exactly how the young king died in the first place remains only partly solved. Some experts believe he suffered a serious injury, possibly a blow to the head, while others point to illness or infection as a more likely cause. Because he died so young, still in his teenage years, many questions remain about his short life and sudden death. Was it an accident, an illness, or something else entirely, lost to the sands of time along with so many other secrets of ancient Egypt? Whatever the truth may be, the legend of the pharaoh's curse continues to capture people's imaginations, proving that even thousands of years after his death, King Tutankhamun still has the power to make people wonder, and maybe even feel just a little bit afraid. Our journey is not over yet. Let's travel now to the flat, dry plains of southern Peru to see something so big that it can only truly be seen from the sky. These are the Nazca Lines, a huge collection of giant drawings scratched into the desert ground, some stretching for hundreds of feet across the earth. The people who made these lines lived around 1500 to 2000 years ago, long before airplanes were ever invented. Yet somehow, they created pictures of animals, plants, and shapes so large that a person standing on the ground cannot even tell what the picture shows. You have to be high up in the air, like in a plane or a helicopter, to see that the lines actually form a giant monkey, a hummingbird, a spider, or a variety of other shapes. This raises an enormous question. If the people who made these drawings could not fly, how did they manage to create pictures meant to be seen from so high above the ground? Some experts believe the artists used simple measuring tools, ropes, and stakes to carefully plan out each drawing on a small scale first, then stretched that same shape out across the huge flat desert using math and careful planning. This is an impressive idea, since it means these ancient artists understood geometry and scale extremely well, even without seeing their finished artwork from above. But this answer does not explain everything either. Why go through so much effort to create pictures that the artists themselves might never have been able to fully see or appreciate? Some historians think the lines were made for religious reasons, perhaps to be seen by gods living in the sky, rather than by other humans on the ground. Others wonder if the lines pointed toward water sources, since the desert here is incredibly dry, and finding water would have been extremely important for survival. Still others have wondered whether the lines lined up with stars or the sun during certain times of the year, similar to many of the sites we have already explored. Whatever the true purpose, the Nazca lines remain some of the most mysterious pieces of ancient art ever created, drawings meant for eyes that may never have existed at the time they were made. From the deserts of Peru, let's travel to the mountains once more, to a fortress above the old Incan capital city of Cusco, called Sacsayhuaman. Just like Ollantaytambo, this site is famous for its walls built from absolutely massive stones fitted together with incredible precision. But here, some of the stones are even larger, with a few blocks weighing more than 100 tons each. To put that in perspective, that is heavier than many modern buildings put together in a single stone. The walls zigzag back and forth in a pattern that looks almost like the teeth of a giant saw, and each enormous stone is shaped uniquely to fit perfectly against its neighbors, without any straight lines or repeated shapes. This is different from stacking simple square bricks, since every single stone had to be custom-shaped to fit into one specific spot. Most historians believe Sacsayhuaman served as a fortress to protect the city of Cusco and also as a place for important religious ceremonies. But the construction itself remains a deep mystery. How did ancient workers cut stones this large with such precision, using only simple stone and bronze tools? How did they transport blocks weighing more than 100 tons across rugged mountain terrain, using no wheels and no large animals strong enough to pull such weight? Some old legends even suggest that ancient builders had ways of softening stone temporarily to help shape it, though modern scientists have found no proof that such a method actually exists. Whatever the true answer, walking along the giant zigzag walls of Sacsayhuaman today still leaves visitors amazed, wondering how human hands, without modern machines, managed to create something so massive and so precise, high in the thin mountain air. Let's cross the world once more, this time to the flat, green fields of southern England, to visit perhaps the most famous ancient monument on Earth, Stonehenge. This circle of giant standing stones has stood on the Salisbury Plain for about 5,000 years, and it remains one of history's greatest puzzles. The stones themselves are enormous, some weighing as much as 25 tons, and they are arranged in a careful circular pattern, with smaller stones called bluestones brought from a location in Wales, more than 150 miles away. Just moving these bluestones such a long distance, across rivers, hills, and forests, without wheels or modern equipment, would have been an incredible challenge on its own. The largest stones, called sarsens, were brought from a closer location, but still required enormous effort to transport and lift into place. Some of the stones were even shaped with careful joints, similar to the way wood is joined together in furniture, allowing horizontal stones to rest securely on top of the standing pillars. This tells us the builders were not simply piling rocks together. They were engineering a structure meant to last, using techniques that still impress modern builders today. And just like many of the other sites we have visited, Stonehenge lines up perfectly with the sun. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly in line with the entrance of the circle, and on the winter solstice, the sun sets in a similarly perfect alignment. This tells us that whoever built Stonehenge studied the sky very carefully over a long period of time, understanding exactly where the sun would appear on specific days each year. But we still do not know for certain why Stonehenge was built. Was it a place of healing, since some old legends describe people traveling great distances hoping the stones held special powers? Was it a giant calendar, helping ancient farmers know when to plant crops or hold festivals? Or was it something even deeper, a place meant to connect the living with ancestors who had already passed away? Despite decades of digging, studying, and searching for answers, Stonehenge continues to guard its secrets, standing quietly in an open field, exactly as it has for thousands of years. Now let's travel to Lebanon, in the Middle East, to visit an ancient site called Baalbek, home to some of the largest cut stones ever used in construction anywhere in the world. Long ago, the Romans built massive temples here, but underneath their temple sits something even older and even more mysterious. A stone platform made from blocks so enormous that modern engineers still find them difficult to explain. Some of these stones, nicknamed the Stones of the Pregnant Woman because of old local legends, weigh close to 1,000 tons each. That is heavier than several jumbo jets combined. Nobody fully understands how ancient builders managed to cut stones this heavy from a nearby quarry, move them across the ground, and lift them into place, stacking them perfectly to form a stable platform strong enough to support even more construction above it. Modern cranes today would struggle to lift stones of this size, and yet somehow, thousands of years ago, without any machines at all, these blocks were transported and placed with incredible accuracy. Some historians believe advanced teams of workers used massive wooden sledges, ropes, and possibly hundreds or even thousands of laborers working together at once. But even with plenty of manpower, the physics of moving something this heavy remains difficult to fully explain using only the tools we know ancient people had. This has led some people to wonder if there is more to the story of Baalbek than we currently understand. Perhaps some forgotten technique or method of moving heavy objects that has since been lost to time. Whatever the true answer, the platform at Baalbek remains one of the most jaw-dropping examples of ancient construction anywhere on the planet, a reminder that our ancestors were capable of achievements that still baffle modern engineers today. Let's move now to the highlands of Bolivia, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, to visit the ruins of Tiwanaku and a smaller nearby site called Pumapunku. This ancient location, believed to be thousands of years old, contains some of the strangest stonework found anywhere in South America. Unlike simple rough-cut blocks, many of the stones at Pumapunku have been carved with perfectly straight edges, sharp right angles, and neatly cut holes and grooves, almost as though they were shaped by machines rather than human hands using ancient tools. Some blocks even appear to have matching, identical notches carved into them, as if they were designed to fit together like pieces of a giant, ancient puzzle or building kit. This level of precision is extremely unusual for stonework of this age. which has led some researchers to wonder how such careful, exact cutting was achieved using only the simple stone and bronze tools known to exist at that time. Mainstream historians believe skilled Andean stoneworkers used careful, repeated grinding and polishing methods, along with stone hammers and other basic tools, slowly shaping the rock over long periods of patient, careful work. This explanation makes sense, but it still leaves people amazed at the incredible skill and patience such work would require. Adding to the mystery, many of the stones found at Pumapunku today lie scattered and broken, as though the site was abandoned suddenly or damaged by some kind of disaster long ago, leaving unfinished work and puzzle piece stones spread across the ground. What was Pumapunku originally meant to look like when it was complete? Why does the site appear so unfinished, almost frozen in the middle of construction? These questions remain unanswered, leaving Pumapunku as one of the most fascinating and puzzling ruins in the Andes Mountains. Let's travel now to the Indus River Valley, in what is today Pakistan, to visit the ruins of an ancient city called Mohenjo-Daro. This city is incredibly old, dating back around 4,500 years, making it one of the very first large cities ever built by humans. What makes Mohenjo-Daro so remarkable is not a giant stone or a beam of sunlight, but its incredibly advanced city planning. The streets of this ancient city were laid out in a careful grid pattern, similar to how many modern cities are designed today, with straight roads crossing each other at right angles. Even more surprising, many homes in this ancient city had their own private bathrooms, connected to a city-wide system of covered drains that carried wastewater safely away from the streets. This kind of organized plumbing was not seen again in many parts of the world for thousands of years afterward. The people of Mohenjo-Daro also created a written language, using small carved symbols on clay seals and other objects. But here is the biggest mystery of all. To this day, nobody has been able to fully translate this ancient writing system. Despite finding thousands of examples of these symbols, scholars still cannot agree on what many of them mean, since we have no matching translation guide, like a dictionary, connecting these ancient symbols to any language we understand today. Somewhere in these untranslated symbols might be stories, laws, trade records, or even names of ancient kings and queens. But until someone finally cracks the code, this information remains completely locked away from us. And to add another layer of mystery, historians still are not entirely sure why this advanced and organized city was eventually abandoned. Some think changes in the flow of nearby rivers made farming difficult. Others wonder about climate change or invasion. Whatever caused its end, Mohenjo-Daro remains a stunning example of ancient human intelligence, hidden behind a wall of writing we still cannot read. Sailing far out into the Pacific Ocean once more, past Easter Island, let's visit a lesser-known but equally strange site called Nan Madol, located near the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia. This incredible ruined city was built directly on top of a shallow coral reef, using nearly 100 small artificial islands connected by narrow canals, almost like a tiny version of Venice built entirely from giant stone logs. The walls here are made from long, naturally formed basalt rock columns, stacked carefully on top of each other like a stack of giant firewood, some of these stone logs weighing several tons each. Nobody knows exactly how these massive stone columns were transported from their original location to the reef, especially since some experts believe certain stones may have traveled a fairly long distance by sea, using nothing more than simple rafts or canoes. Local legends passed down through generations claim that the walls were built using magic, with giant stones supposedly flown into place by powerful ancient sorcerers. While modern historians do not believe in magical flight, these old stories tell us that even the descendants of the original builders eventually lost the knowledge of exactly how their own ancestors constructed this incredible city. If the people living nearby, generations later, could not fully explain how it was built, imagine how difficult it is for modern scientists trying to piece together the same mystery today. Was Nan Madol built as a home for powerful chiefs and priests? Was it a place of important religious ceremony? Most experts believe it likely served both purposes, standing as a center of political and spiritual power for the region. But the exact methods used to build such an enormous stone city, floating among tiny islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, remain deeply mysterious even today. Finally, before we close our long journey, let's talk about a mystery that involves not stone, but paper. In the early 20th century, a rare book collector discovered a strange, old handwritten book, now known as the Voynich manuscript. This book is filled from cover to cover with beautifully drawn pictures of unknown plants, strange diagrams of stars and circles, and pages showing tiny naked figures bathing in swirling green pools connected by strange pipes and tubes. But surrounding every single picture is text written in a language that nobody in the entire world has ever been able to read. The writing uses its own unique alphabet, unlike any known language, ancient or modern. Experts have studied this book using powerful modern computers, comparing its patterns to hundreds of known languages, and yet nobody has cracked its code. Some people believe the manuscript contains real medical or scientific information from long ago, perhaps describing plants and medicines that have since been forgotten. Others believe the entire book might be an elaborate hoax, cleverly created centuries ago simply to trick people into believing it holds secret, valuable knowledge. Scientific testing has shown that the physical pages of the book are genuinely old, dating back roughly 600 years, which makes a modern hoax less likely, though not impossible. So what does this mysterious book actually say? Is it a secret medical guide, an ancient scientific text, or perhaps something else entirely that we have not yet imagined? Until someone finally figures out how to translate its strange language, the Voynich manuscript remains one of history's most puzzling secrets, hidden in plain sight, written in a language that has never once been spoken by anyone alive today. And so our long journey across the ancient world comes to an end, but the mysteries themselves are far from finished. From swirling spirals carved into French stone, to a beam of sunlight sneaking through an Irish tomb once every single year, to gears ticking inside a 2,000-year-old machine pulled from the bottom of the sea, humans across time and across the entire globe have left behind puzzles that we are still trying to solve today. Some of these mysteries might one day be explained by careful scientists using new tools and new technology. Others might remain unsolved forever, their true answers lost, along with the people who built them, buried under centuries of dust, water, and time. But maybe that is exactly why these stories continue to capture our imaginations. They remind us that the past is not simply something we can fully know and file away. It is still out there, waiting quietly in old stones, hidden rooms, and empty lighthouses, whispering questions that history has not yet answered. And who knows, maybe someday you will be the one to finally uncover the truth behind one of these ancient and enduring mysteries.